You're ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
All right.
Well, we're on.
We're on. So for those at home, we are back from our recess, and we are now going to take up the budget for the Water Protection Collaborative, and Andrew Gottlieb is here representing the collaborative.
That was good for me to see what you've got. So I can know how to manipulate
Do they have your goals? Usually
My
we ask
goal.
if you have
All right. Let me just sort of set some context, if I could. You know, we spent a lot of time the first half of this fiscal year, as you know, with you and talking about the outcome of the review committee process. You guys were very helpful in taking a vote back in December prior to the submission of the budget that sort of laid clear what the path is going to be in terms of the structure of the collaborative. You know, we're going to stay as we're currently constructed. We're going to focus on regional watershed priorities, establish a subcommittee structure that is based on making progress in a number of priority water bodies and watersheds. We're beginning that when we began that work today, and we'll be carrying that forward over the course of the next month. And so, you know, I think we're in pretty good position having, you know, a clear idea of what our policy focus is going to be, what our implementation focus is going to be, what the structure of the governing board and the underlying subcommittee structure is going to be through fiscal 11, based on the vote that you took back in December. So that gives me a fair amount of clarity in terms of thinking through and advising and discussing with the collaborative governing board and steering committee on what our budget priorities ought to be recommended to you. And what you have in front of you is a budget proposal that admittedly does not stick precisely to the level funded guidance that we set. There is some expansion here. It is, in the broader context of the overall budget, pretty nominal. Tens of thousands of dollars, and I think there's a good basis upon which to for you to consider that. We'll talk about that today. The major policy area and goal that, you know, this budget supports, well, it's two, and they're related. One is the focus, as I mentioned, on preserving, protecting, and restoring special places that people can identify with. You can call it place-based, you can call it watershed-based, you can call it whatever you want. And we're obviously, one of the discussions we had this morning at the board was to figure out a thing to call it that means something to more people than place-based, and we'll work on that. But the reality is, you know, we're going to pick some priority watersheds, we're going to make some recommendations to you, we're going to set up and align ourselves in a way that focuses the collaborative's efforts as well as the broader capabilities of the operating parts in Barnstable County on solving problems in those areas. The second element of that, and sort of a precondition to doing that, is providing some help to towns. Now, we've got a long track record at this point, both in terms of watching what's happened in some of our towns, sharing of information and learnings that happens over the course of the collaborative's meetings, and a pretty good cross-section from what's happened in 2009 of some of the places towns get hung up on implementing wastewater plans. And then the area of the validity of the analysis upon which they're being asked to spend a lot of money and how they're going to pay for it. A lot of other noise around. I mean, boil it down, most of the problems that towns are confronting in pursuing implementation strategies have their roots in those two issues. And so the budget request you have before you proposes some expansion of effort and a refocusing of effort around county services to municipalities to help address those key areas. And the concept behind here is that we would have a four-pronged effort on services to our towns. One would be, and the two probably most important ones within that are the provision of, the hiring of some consultants who can serve as circuit riders and go to the individual towns to answer questions in engineering and finance. And the questions we anticipate these folks being able to answer are on the engineering side, help the Board of Selectmen in that, and Pat experienced this recently, create a committee, send the committee off to do a lot of work. They do a lot of work, some of which you see, some of which you don't see, a lot of issues they deal with. And they come put this big report on you that's dense, complex, well thought out in most cases, and very expensive. And people look at that, and then they come to the Board of Selectmen because it's in your lap, and they'll say, we have problems with, the analysis of your alternatives wasn't done on a fair basis. Your consultant's biased. Your staff's biased. This disfavors this to that. Predetermines the outcome. The basis upon which the technical analysis on the loadings wasn't right. They should have carried a nitrogen factor of X, and I know better, and they're wrong. Mm-hmm. And most boards of selectmen sit there and go, number one, I'm not sure I know what they're talking about, and number two, how do I find the answer to this? And the natural reaction is to ask your staff, and then the public reaction to that, of the people concerned say, well, their staff's in cahoots with you. Of course, they're going to tell you everything's fine because they're the ones that gave you the report. And so the idea behind this service is to have an unbiased and frankly untainted by working for any one particular town on the Cape consulting firm that understands and knows the professional standards required to do wastewater planning and engineering analyses. And we would dispatch that person to go into a town, look at the analysis that was done, and hand it to the selectmen and tell you not whether the recommended alternatives are good ones or make sense for your town, but whether or not the underlying analysis met professional ethics and standards.
It's like a peer review?
I don't like the term because it has all sorts of connotations associated with other things that have been going on, especially around UMass Dartmouth, so I've avoided doing that. But it's a value engineer, in my mind, that is an unbiased source that a Board of Selectmen can have confidence in. Not to say they don't have confidence in their own folks, but gives you a third party that you can go to and say, did they do the cost comparisons on a fair basis? The things that were, the assumptions that are embedded in here, fair and legitimate, do they meet your professional standard? And that will give boards of selectmen, in my view, and the governing board's view, the ability to say, we really need to go back and look at this issue, or say, hey, you know what? You might not like the outcome, you might not like the price tag, but the basis of the analysis is legitimate, and we'll use it, and we'll take your input on what this means to our community, but we don't think there's anything to attack on the basis of the analysis. I think that will help short circuit a lot of the delay, a lot of the consternation, and a lot of the hostility and side taking that has occurred in some of the other towns that people are now spending a lot of time trying to recover. The other primary service of the towns is in financial management planning. The dynamic is you get that report, it says $600 million, and you say, well, I can't do a debt exclusion for $600 million. No way that's going to pass. I can't put $600 million on betterments because that's going to cost everybody $50,000. I don't have any way to finance this, so I'm done. I'm stuck. It's a quick no. And in reality, there's ways to look at funding these projects. They don't all elements of the project don't have to get funded the same way. They don't have to get financed the same way. They don't have to show up in the tax rolls the same way. And that is a learning process that selectmen and town managers need to go through. If we can bring somebody in that can sort of say, all right, I'll walk you off the ledge, it's a big number, but here's some ways we can break this up that make it manageable. Not desirable, not something you want to do, but it's manageable. And here's some different ways to model it and look at it. Again, we think that can save a lot of time and avoid people spending a lot of energy taking positions on things that aren't necessarily all that relevant to solving the problems.
Is that a response to a general, to create a general model, or is that an intention to react to a particular request? No,
it's a general service available based on what we've seen happen in the last year.
Would that lead to us creating, and this is personal bias of mine, if we could create some type of a template, a model that it might be not a universal one, but one that had elements of the probability of expense in this area is this, the outcomes or your choices are in a range, 50-50, 50% betterment, 50% spread tax. This is the impact on a both a per unit, let's say per capita basis, as well as a townwide basis.
Clearly the steps that this person would take in walking through a town would do just that. Part of the value is not helping them fill out the boxes in the spreadsheet, but helping a management team get their mind around
Yeah.
how to take a big number and break it into more manageable pieces.
Right, so
The model is actually less important in some respects than the help walking somebody through the thought process that gets them to the point where they feel they can manage the number. And then filling out the boxes, that's easy.
Yeah, it sounds like the standard engineering economic model approach, where you forget about what you've been in the past, look at where you are now, and look in the future.
Right.
A couple of things. So this would work in unison with the final wastewater, the regional plan that's going to come out of the commission.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at viewed watersheds, and this seems to me to go back to the recommendation that I believe that I heard last month, that really that the representation of the towns, which is what we want, and everyone seems to agree to that, including people here in this room, but that those representatives really be the decision makers, so that they can not only be privy as to what's going on around the Cape, but to be, we all know, and I think I can speak definitely for myself, and I'm sure Pat would concur. You go through this once, you don't get it all. You have to. It's something you have to really, the finances and the complexity and the relationship it has with other towns really does take getting into it, and the more you're focused on it, the more those concepts become understandable and then doable.
Right.
So
the way we left things back in December was that you folks as a board, and I owe you some drafting of some ideas, we're going to convey back to the individual towns what the outcome of the review process was, what the path going forward was, and your thoughts and expectations about how you want to see town leadership engage more fully in the work that's going on through the collaborative and other places in the county. So I will get you that.
that's what I thought. Okay.
So the
So
other,
you'll help us with that letter.
yeah,
Okay.
the other two elements of this municipal services. One, as you know, we've been working on a very productive program on the utility and regulatory hurdles of dealing with nutrient or wetland alteration to take nutrients out of the system as an alternative to building infrastructure to do it. And we're looking in the next year that trying to find a town to put one of those projects forward. You volunteering? Because you're one of the two on my list, three on my list. The three sites are, Bourne's Pond in Falmouth, Dredging Mill Pond at the intersection of 28 and 149 in Barnstable, and the Parkers River opening where it crosses 28 in Yarmouth. And so one or more of those we'd like to see become more real in fiscal 2011. I think there's a clear role for the county to play in helping towns through the regulatory process. And so we're looking at spending a little bit of that money, working on that, also looking at some potential grant sources, state and federal grants as supplements to what the county may be able to bring to bear to run those programs.
Can I ask a question on the Yarmouth piece?
Yeah.
I know there was a DRI that was at that's the site of the old drive-in theater.
Yeah.
And we went out there to take a look at that site for some other things. Is this incorporated in with that DRI?
Not really. In shorthand, what I want to do is, in an effort to try and convince the commissioner of the highway division of the new Department of Transportation, I guess is how they are in the new bureaucracy, this would be a really good place for her to spend some road and bridge money. If she's going to be reconstructing 28 anyway, let's open up the bridge abutment back to the natural width of that channel and eliminate the need for sewering the Parkers River watershed for the town of Yarmouth, saving $30 million in the process. So that's, it really, I was not thinking of it in concert with the broader development opportunities that might exist in that area. I think more about it from the highway, because if they rebuild 28 and don't do this, they're never going to let us touch it.
I hear that, but at some point, it's important that the town of Yarmouth be engaged in the fact that this, so it doesn't look like it's counter to what their intentions are.
No, and I think that obviously we'd be looking to the town of Yarmouth to be the sponsor. We haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
And then the last piece is a little bit of help to towns who are still awaiting their technical reports from UMass Dartmouth, and the ability to facilitate, interpret, and make up for lost time, and advocate on behalf of those towns with UMass Dartmouth and DEP to get done what needs to get done to get that work done. So those four elements, I think, take a lot of the policy discussion that we've been talking about focusing on priority watersheds, getting things done, getting projects moving, and helping towns get unstuck. And I think it puts our money where our mouth is. And you know, the proposal is $175,000 out of a $319,000 budget request to you to provide those services. And I think, frankly, it's money very well spent, and will bring to life a lot of things we've talked about. I mentioned to the board that in this morning that DEP's hasn't published yet, but I happen to know that there are no new SRF projects from the Cape on the 2010 funding list. Not because they didn't qualify, because nobody asked. Okay? And I think one of our goals in 2011 is we got to get some projects on the table.
Absolutely.
And to get projects on the table, we're going to have to help towns get over the dogfight over the alternatives analysis, the adequacy of the engineering, and how the heck we're going to pay for this. So if we don't step in and do this and be able to get some good, smart people on the ground in 3 or 4 towns that are at the place where they're dealing with these issues, we're going to sit here a year from now and say, what a shame, we didn't ask for any of that money again. So, you know, it's pretty clear why. This is the year to deal with it.
All right. You mentioned alternatives. Was that in your consideration, the evaluation of, say, alternatives like decentralization clusters, as opposed to
what I envision
on-site
this person, this engineering capability to do is say whether the analysis or the comparison of on-site small systems, large systems, denitrifying systems was legitimate and is adequate for your, as a selectman, your basis for making a management decision. They're not going to go in and say, you know, if you configured these systems this way instead of that way, you'd have a better outcome. That's not what we're asking them to do. We're not asking them to re-engineer your plans. We're asking them to go in and say, is the basis upon which your analysis was made legitimate? You know, did they fairly treat on-site systems at a removal rate, or did they assume they're really good or they're really bad to make the outcome that they wanted be the one that's put in front of you? So it's not a re-engineering of your alternatives. It's just a verification that you as a decision maker were given legitimate information upon which to make your value judgment.
Other question. Are you proposing that this begin in July, or do you have funds now?
Don't have funds now.
You don't have funds now.
If you want to find me funds for it, we'll go out and hire somebody to do it now.
The APCC just get it beginning.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we could,
no, this would be, you know, and obviously we'd have to go through a procurement process to identify and hire these people. So that would take some time. If, you know, this is something that passes muster in his interest, you know, I'll start that procurement process now, so that July 1, when the money's, if it's fiscal 11 money, we've got somebody picked and we, you know, run the contracts and they're available July 1. If it's something we can accelerate, all the better. But it's not something I was planning on, you know, that we're looking at funding in this current fiscal year. Although the need's there.
Right.
I had mentioned today, and I'm no way suggesting county tax and that sort of thing, but in really, you know, when you're up at night and you know your head is spinning, you try to make it a productive spin. So I was just thinking about the draft of the regional wastewater as it was proposed, and how it was really sort of identifying you know, several different hot spots around watersheds. And it really sort of looked, if it comes, the final analysis and the final product sort of points to about 6 to 8 different sites where you know, these efforts could be made, and it could take care of the whole region. You know, I would like to see how much the total cost. I mean, if we could sort of look at each of those projects, they're all going to be a little bit different because they're with different towns, different situations to an extent. But how much would it cost in the end, overall, if we could come up with an estimate?
Well, I'll give you the rough, very rough and dirty estimates, and this isn't the first time I've used them because I put them in the memo that we provided to Congressman Delahunt. If you take sort of the everybody builds their own
Right.
Gross number, so you got, not that every community needs a treatment facility, but if 11 or 12 treatment facilities get built, or a combination of treatment facilities get built wholly within one town's boundaries and don't do anything else,
Right.
working number we're using right now is about $8 billion. Okay, if you look at shared systems that are predicated around the needs of the water body and are not engineered and designed around municipal boundaries, probably talking something closer to 3.
Makes a lot more sense.
It's a lot cheaper. Still a big number.
Right.
That's sort of the working number that we're using in the discussions and development of the regional plan.
That's good. That's very good news. And I guess as we go through financial analysis, we can take a look at how that's best addressed and equitably distributed and benefited from.
Right. I mean, I'll tell you that people are, and I'm hesitant because of people's sensitivity that the county efforts are going to sort of turn into a Cape version of the MWRA. I know that's something y'all confronted when you talked about, you dealt with a lot, Bill, when you're talking about putting the collaboratives together. But the MWRA is a worthwhile comparative example for the simple reason that if you remember 25 years ago, all the discussions is, the MWRA is going to bankrupt every moderate to low income person in the metropolitan Boston area. Cost of the system is going to be, more than people's property taxes. It's going to forever alter the economic capabilities of the region. Not to minimize it, but the per capita cost of the MWRA system, which was a $6 billion set of wastewater improvement, was somewhere around $2,000 per person.
Right, because it was spread over.
Okay? Because they spread it out over 2.5 million people. The per capita cost in some of the projects that are being talked about on the Cape, because in the most extreme, they're not being spread out over, let alone 2.5 million people, the town, the county, they're being spread out over simply the people that are connecting, are $40,000 a household.
Right.
Those, the world was going to end at $2,000 a head in 1980 dollars with the MWRA, and yet we're having towns having serious conversations about hitting people with $40,000 bills.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work.
Right.
The MWRA example worked, and you can take it for what it's worth and figure out how it applies to your individual town, because costs were spread out.
Mm-hmm. And just to underline your point is that, and it didn't even have to cost that if the town had accessed the money available that the federal government was then providing, which is what we have available to an extent.
Well, that's
now.
part of the lesson of the MWRA. It was $2,000. It was $6 billion, most of which, 5 and change was, or 4 and change came out of the ratepayers of metropolitan Boston, because the MWRA, or the state in the MDC at that time, didn't pursue that free money. We're now in a situation where we're, confronting the reality that our towns have, are going to be 2 years into a 10-year window and not taking advantage of the lowest cost funding that's available to them. And that's not a good thing for anybody on the Cape.
And I think that the citizens really do have to understand that beyond their own town borders and their boards of selectmen, that this is not any underhanded or control thing. It's really something when you come together and share costs. Those costs are less for each person.
Well, they're less
burdensome.
They're less for each individual, and everything we've seen demonstrates that when regional facilities are built, because you can. The further away from the water body of concern you are, the more homes you have to sewer to get a given pound of nitrogen out of the system, because the further away it is, the less of it gets to the system. So if you're talking about a town that shares a watershed, contributes nitrogen to that system, but is kind of far away from the water, it is less cost effective for that town to build sewers because they got to sewer more people in order to get the same pound of nitrogen out of the system.
Right.
If those two towns join together, then the town that's further away can make financial contribution to the system, but you can emphasize the infrastructure development in the areas in the other town that's closer to the water. The net result is you build less.
Right.
And because you're building less, the cost goes down. And then, so you're trying to finance less on the backs of your taxpayers, and you spread it out, you get a multiplier effect and the benefit in lowering the cost of people. So the dynamics of go it alone raise everyone's real cost because you're building more than you need to do, and you're distributing it across a smaller set of taxpayers, and so everybody's share of that real cost is higher than it would otherwise be. So the arguments for shared systems between towns financially is enormously compelling.
Now, I think the other thing too is that's important is to define what these shared watersheds are. I remember the presentation that Paul made, the draft that you a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, really takes a look at the Cape as a whole. And I think every town has to see this because they have to understand that it isn't just their town that they have to worry about, but that in the planning phase, if you look at the Cape as a whole, then it brings each town's role in terms of wastewater planning more intelligent because they have to look at the watersheds that they share.
Right.
And because in order to get to that goal of building less and providing the nitrogen removal to more is really the way to go.
Well, the steering committee's meeting tomorrow, and we're going to start the discussion about priority watersheds.
Because even the projects that towns are building, it requires a Cape Cod Commission review anyway. So the Cape Cod Commission is going to look at it and say, what is the regional aspect of this plan?
Absolutely.
And if there is a regional component that exists that wasn't addressed, better to get this all done early on.
Yeah, and you have to confront it. I think there's a if you look at it solely from forget money for a minute,
right,
of achieving the objective of water quality improvement, it's pretty hard for towns that share watersheds to do it on their own. If the adjoining town isn't doing something, if you guys in Falmouth do something on McCoy Bay and Mashpee's not doing anything, you're not going to reach your water quality goal.
Right.
So they're in action, and I'm not suggesting that they're not doing anything, but it's just illustrative as an example. If you spend a lot of money on your side of the bay and watershed and clean up your nitrogen loading, and the adjoining town doesn't do anything, you're not going to meet water quality goals, and you've thrown your money down the toilet, if you will.
Literally.
I want to go back to when we talked about getting some support from the community, that the easiest thing to do at that time was to just say we're not going to do anything and let those forces that were trying to install the MWRA process, which was driven by judicial fiat, in there. One of the interesting things that came out of the conversation at the town of Barnstable the other night was that they were convinced that if there was a judicial mandate, that they would supply the funds that went along with it. And what I tried to point out,
why don't they talk to the MWRA?
Well, what I pointed out to them, at the time was that the judge will make that determination, and then you will all pay. And then one of the points that I tried to make in the beginning, and we've continually tried to make, is that if you have an opportunity for choice, you have more control over the outcome than if you have to put in more than you need. And there are still elements within the community, within the Cape Cod community, that believe that because of the need of people who are elected to office for having political cover, that eventually that will be the thing that goes behind it. There are some very positive things that are happening within different towns. I believe you're starting a CAC in Falmouth. Okay, and there's also a CAC that's in Barnstable. And it was very encouraging to hear that in Barnstable they were trying to recruit members from the neighboring communities, from Yarmouth and from Dennis and from Mashpee, so that they would all participate in it. So all of those are good things. And to me, the most important thing that we can do going forward is how can we build on the positive things that have happened so that we can continue that momentum. the money that you're talking about for a circuit rider, you could bring in a reincarnation of the late great JC if there are elements within the community that have decided that they don't want it, they don't want to spend the money. It doesn't make any difference. But I think that's a good faith effort to augment what staff within the towns are.
I mean, I think what it does is it gives the selectmen the tools and the cover to be able to say, you may feel strongly about it, but you're not right about A, B, and C, and we're gonna decide what we're gonna decide.
And
Because now they
finally,
have that.
Right.
the only important thing to an individual is what is it going to cost me, not what it's going to cost the town, not what it's going to cost the state, but what is it going to cost me to support this? Because there's continuing support for doing the right thing, but there isn't continuing support to pay for the right thing. So that's the key. That's what we have to get down to. So the financial model, I think, is an essential part of this, so that people can get, as you say, get their arms around what it's going to cost.
In terms, just your first point, you can make the argument that if the pain, the court-imposed solution is so painful that the political system will react and subsidize it. You can make that argument. I think people can point speciously to the MWRA and say, well, that's what happened there. But the reality is they ended up with, they paid for, 80-something% of it. They got some federal money. It was big numbers because the project was big. But it wasn't worth it. And the second thing is, if you get a court order to do these projects, you're ineligible for the zero interest. So, it's a nice theoretical argument, political science argument that somebody might want to have. I would suggest you do your town a disservice if you say, I'm going to sit back and do nothing, get ordered to do it, and then the political system's going to come to my rescue, versus I can be proactive, scope this project in a way that is fitting my community character and my water quality needs, and can be financed in a way that is to my liking and choosing, and I access relatively inexpensive money to do it. I mean, I think to choose the form of no decision route is, disservice. I think anybody who thinks about no decision as an alternative in this context is setting themselves up and their towns up for failure. So, we'll see. And lastly, you got to look at, if you want to do the political science argument, things are a lot different now than they were in the days when MWRA got $100 million a year for several years from the federal government. We had the Speaker of the House from Massachusetts. We had seniority in the Senate that we no longer have. Anybody think that's kind of largesse is coming our way because we didn't do anything and got taken to court? It's kidding themselves.
So you've identified, or will identify, the areas of prime opportunity for addressing.
We're going to come to you with some recommendations on priority watersheds, and I think my inclination is to pick a couple ones that are obvious and easy and where there's likelihood of some ready success, and I'll probably pick a couple that are a little bit more challenging. Simply because they're challenging, they need some help, and I think that I kind of can offer that kind of help. And I also think that there's nothing wrong with picking some successful opportunities to show people that and make real some of the theories.
Okay, so a reasonable expectation for outcome from the Wastewater Collaborative would be to deliver on some of those: the financial model, the identification of the watersheds, the communication and participation and support of the communities that that are involved. And at the end, we could say that this was the expectation that we had as a Board of Commissioners, and then we could take a look at that to see whether or not there was a delivery on it.
Well, see, I think that the way things are moving in wastewater now, I think that the direction that you're going in is exactly where the collaborative is heading in terms of making this go forward and providing the technical support and the review and the assistance to the towns.
I think we're at a point now where we know what towns need. There's real, it's beyond theoretical. We've got, 2009 was a hard year for wastewater management on the Cape.
Absolutely.
Let's be honest about it. We went backwards. And, I think that, the commitment ought to be in calendar 2010. And I think some of that's turned around. And I think that, but 2010 is going to be an important year to show that there is a way to make these things work financially, from an aesthetic and growth management point of view, and from a water quality point of view.
An important reason for supporting this, by the way, when I talked to Mark Forrest about the money that came to Chatham, his first question is, how much money is the county putting in? I said, we're continuing to support the wastewater effort, and I think it's important that we show that we're putting some money in that mix, so that when we approach the feds, we could say that, you know, we're participating, we're making a commitment to support it, so that when we ask for more help, we can point to what we've done to try to support.
I'm going to just very discreetly putting the numbers in front of you. It's just saying, talk about the numbers for me.
Yes.
So we've talked about the
Make
100.
sure you're good with them. This is your opportunity.
Yeah. We've talked about the 175,000 that will go into those municipal services initiatives.
County funds.
County funds. This is all county funds. There's 87,000 in funding that constitutes my salary, some expenses associated with operating, and administrative expenses in the area of $10,000, and that's consistent with what we have for funding this year. There's another 15 grand in there for public education and outreach activities. We always have need for ongoing discussion with the public. And then there's a $42,000 item that was a carryover of fiscal 10 that provides funding support to County Health and Environment's database management, where they are managing the data and the sampling and the public accessibility to all the data that comes from the 1,500 or so IA systems that are in people's backyards. Very valuable service. You know, we are in a position to be able to answer the questions about, well, what is really the removal rate from all these on-site systems, not theoretically and not based on what the vendor says they're going to be, but based on actuals. And that has put us in a very strong position, and I think a nation-leading position in terms of being able to use real information. This was funded in this current fiscal year through the collaborative's budget back to the county health. There was some discussion that was going to be a one-year bridge funding, with the notion being that there was going to be a fee basis established from the sample, you know, the installers, back theoretically probably back to either they're going to eat it or go back through the maintenance contracts to the homeowners. For a variety of reasons, that fee hasn't been implemented yet. So there was a request from County Health, which we incorporated into this budget request, to carry that forward. The steering committee's view on this was, unquestionably, we want to see the activity continue. It does push the collaborative's budget request over the level funding expectation that you set for us, and so I wanted to highlight it as the area where, you know, this might be something that's some further discussion about whether we should accelerate the development of that fee, whether there's some other place to find that funding. We don't want to be perceived as the least bit negative about seeing the activity continue, because it's critical. But when you look at our budget and you think about it, that's the thing that gets us up over our level funding request. And I just want to highlight that for you as a discussion we ought to be having.
Okay, yeah, Sheila, and then
What was the explanation of why that fee hasn't been implemented to this
Tough
point?
year to do it.
Hmm?
It's a tough year to do it. Tough year to do it.
Okay.
And, you know, and that carries some. It was a tough year.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you can't deny it.
Can't deny it.
The discussion over at the Assembly is trying to define the difference between level funding and level service. You know, and then I think that this falls in the area of trying to maintain level services from year to year, because the intention last year was to try to put this in place.
Right. But I think, you be careful with that, in the sense that, the $175,000 municipal support is not a level service initiative. It falls within a level funding scenario, but it doesn't fall within a level service. And yet, I would argue I'm sure there's a lot of worthy things that are put in front of you if people want to do. I can't think of any better way, sort of in our environmental arena, to spend some expansions and sort of expand the functions, although not the mission. I don't think this is a mission creep discussion. Right. This is a redirecting how we spend money to actually accomplish the mission. So I would hate to see this get, to have the conversation only become about level
I agree.
service.
I agree.
Because then that knocks this out of the game. And I
Absolutely.
think that's a big mistake.
And
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think that it was the Assembly of Delegates who chose to make their interpretation of what level funding is. And I think when we go back to the Assembly, we need to define for them what level funding is, because we're using that term level funding. We're not using level service. So I think we need to be clear
We
with
do
the
need to
Assembly.
do that, because I think there was some confusion.
That's
that came
right.
up
There
with
was,
that.
and I think we
You know,
need to
it's a
clear it up
nuance,
for
but it's an
them.
important one.
Yes.
And I don't know how it plays out through all the other things you're being asked to do here, but I would imagine we're not unique in that notion.
And one other question. I'm sure this discussion took place earlier today. There was talk last year that we do some sort of conference at the collaborative, because there is this sort of disinformation out there,
Yep.
just sort of, and has I believe you did have some
We are doing
conversation
it.
on that. Is there going to be? Is this going to go? Is this going to happen after the regional wastewater plan is in place, or is this?
I'm not
going to
sure.
be-
I mean, we're still trying to find a date. I've lined up the people that I want to have speak at this thing, and I'm trying to sort of manage everybody's schedule. So we're looking at March, April time frame to try and do this. I'll check back with Paul and see where we are on schedule. And just let me tell you that the objective of this thing is not to get into the mud on the, small systems, big systems discussion,
Right.
but to target it toward decision makers in town and give them the tools that they're going to need to understand the regulatory context, the planning context, and the financial context, so that you'll walk out of there with an understanding of the financial modeling and the steps you might want to think about going through to determine affordability. You're going to ideally get something that tells you, if I pick a combined solution that has some central treatment, some things some people consider central treatment, some things people would consider package or neighborhood scale treatment, and some continued use of on-site systems, both vanilla Title V and IA systems. If I have a program that does that, for each one of those elements, what are the legal requirements the DEP is going to impose on me, both from a permitting perspective, what's the burden I'm going to have to meet in order to get a permit, and what's the burden I'm going to have to meet in terms of understanding what I'm going to have to account for annual costs in my program. So you have this big matrix, basically, where they say, if you have an impaired water body, your town has an impaired water body, and your plan is all on-site, you won't get a permit. If your plan is all centralized, one big plant in the middle of town, you are going to have to get a groundwater discharge permit. You're going to have to meet this discharge standard. You're going to have to show, this type of engineering analysis. You're going to have to show the ability to finance operation and maintenance costs in order to meet these standards. And it's not to say that's what you should build, but I'd like the selectman who goes there to walk out with having heard somebody say, if it's this is what the burden, and this is what you're going to have to do. This is permittable in these cases. This is not. And so, it ties very well into the regional plan, and we'll sort of figure out whether it's out or not.
And again, with that as maybe even a starting point, then to encourage that the members that are on there as their representative be a selectman, because then they have a base to start with of information, and they can build their understanding and have updates and be part of that process. And it really is where they're supposed to be.
I'd like to get for that when we hold this thing, selectmen and town managers and finance committee members from every single town in that room.
So we would have to pick it at a convenient time, location.
It's a tough
and we have to offer
needle
food,
to thread. We are going
because it's the only way we're going to get people.
We are going to. No, we're going to give them lunch.
lunch.
We're going to give them lunch. Probably going to charge $10-15. We're doing this.
Right.
We're doing this in conjunction with DEP. They're co-sponsors of this with the county. I've got some money in this year's budget to help defray some of the costs. They have assigned New England Interstate Water Pollution Control Commission, which is the sort of New England-wide regional professional managers association that DEP pays some money to annually. They've detailed and assigned and authorize them to use some of their funding that the state provides to provide the management and oversight and coordination of this thing. So between us, New England State, and DP, we're going to put on this conference. We're going to feed people. We're going to ask them to pay a nominal amount that won't fully offset the cost of it.
Maybe like a Saturday or something. Like
It'll probably be a Saturday.
Right.
And we're probably looking at doing it at the college.
Great.
Go from there. There's no perfect time to do it. You need people for a day.
Yes.
You know, you can't do it in the dead of winter because you don't have as many people around. It's hard to do it in the spring because people want to get out on the weekends. You can't do it at night because it's too much information to jam in there.
Right.
You know, you're going to lose somebody. We'll record the thing so that there's the ability for people to access the information.
Maybe distribute those DVDs.
DVDs around. You know, we'll do the best we can with it.
Okay.
Actually, you can upload it.
You can't win.
To a like a My Access TV, and it could stream, and it'd be on something like that forever. So you might want to think about doing that.
We'll wait and see how it comes out before we put it on perpetual forever.
Well, you don't do it automatically.
Andy, would any of your committee members like to say anything?
It looks like this.
I don't know.
Or Gussie does. Yeah.
Yes, I would, and thank you for the opportunity. Gussie McCusick, Orleans. I really love this idea of getting the decision makers in the loop to do this. And if this could be coupled with the advertisement or announcement or some sort of information sheet about the technical assistance that's going to be coming forward, and Andrew's, he called them circuit riders today, and I think that was a good analogy.
Yes,
It's a perfect follow-up to give them the information and then tell them how they can plug in to these other services afterwards, because the timing would be perfect. And I know our town seems to be the poster child for chaos, and we need it. And I'm sure there's a lot of other towns. Jerry told me they did too.
No. You can be the poster for chaos.
Thank you.
Any other?
Well, I think I would get Larry
Yes,
Valentine
Larry,
from
of
Harwich.
course.
I just heard to add how much we appreciate your support for the collaborative and how we're going forward. We've had a lot of, I think, good discussions in the last few months, and I like where it came out. We're working together and, aiding each other.
Right.
To add what Andrew said on some of these concepts, and Bill, you brought up, some of these we just desperately need help on the engineering part. For instance, just so people compare apples to apples. A lot of discussions I've been in, they're not comparing the same factors going into AI or central or whatever you want, cluster systems. And on the financial, the same thing. So we can look at a model or spreadsheet, if you will, of betterments versus general taxes. Be interesting, I think, Sheila, you brought it up, to then do that locally and then do the same exercise regionally.
Yes.
So it's not, right now people are mystified by that.
Yes.
And we got to present it so it's not that complicated. You can put in your numbers of what-if scenarios and see where you come out. And that's what Andrew's presented. That's it'll help us a lot. We got to bring the people along with us, and all these tools are just are vital. And again, I appreciate your help.
Yeah, and I also, I think that you as a selectman sitting in on these meetings are now much more informed than you were even a year ago, Larry, but you also feel less threatened by the process because you see that this is really a collective sharing of a burden as opposed to giving some sort of voice or power up, and that's what I think that towns have to feel comfortable with as well.
Yeah, threat maybe is too strong a word, but I was concerned. Well, we all have our selfish reasons.
Yes, we all do.
And this is such a critical issue. My concern has been and continues is how do we best sell that to our town residents?
Right.
And the Cape has a strong history of not being forced to do things from on top.
Right.
And so my concern is we position ourselves so we're working together, which we are, and we bring everyone along with us because we have. That's right.
No, and I think that's the goal. It's just
Okay, I think that concludes our discussion. That was great, really good. We're very glad to hear it. I think we're positioned to take off on this.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's have a good year.
Yes.
Yes, thanks very much.
Have a productive
and we're going to take a
substantial
recess because our next meeting is at 1 o'clock, so we have an hour for your lunch. So, thank you. On.
Correct.
Okay, welcome. We're back from our recess, and we have with us Darlene Johnson from The Research and Development Office and AmeriCorps.
Yep, Resource Development Office at AmeriCorps Cape Cod.
Yep.
And I'm here to present my budget.
Okay.
Since yours is the big money producer for the county, you certainly would be.
As you can see, if you look down through my budget, there's the proposed budget for the Resource Development Office and for AmeriCorps program. There are increases. Otherwise, it's level. I have level funds, and if you want me to just hit the increases, or if there's anything else you would like to specifically talk about.
Well,
Good.
all right. I went through these, and usually I highlight certain things, and I didn't highlight anything on your budget.
The only thing I have was 13.5 on the matching grants. Over here.
Page 2 or page 1?
Page 1.
And the number, the account number?
The account number is, the last one I was 5498.
Oh, 5498. Match to grants?
Match to grants.
Yeah.
That's, I only had
Resource development?
What
Yes.
is that?
A few years ago, I came to the county commissioners and we talked about putting in a grant match line where we would be able to leverage grants for the towns or grants for the, and it was approved, and we carry this money, and this is the money that we use to, when we're trying to leverage the match, the cash match money, when the towns come in for a project, say for the herring run and sandwich, we've matched a number of grants. If you would like to see a list of all of those grants that we have matched in the past to increase our opportunity, because most of the time when you're putting in a grant, you're not going to be able to go out to a town or a county department, and they're not going to have the money to put up a cash match. So this is what this money is.
It allows for almost immediate operation. So in other words, instead of having to go back and find the money and appropriate it, it gives you cash in hand and
it's worked very well.
Yeah.
I did make a list, and I don't know if you want these handout materials. I brought them for you. If you don't, if you would rather I hold them and put a package together for you later, I will. But these are all the grants, and in here it will tell you basically what the program is, the funder, the applicant, the request, how much we requested, what was awarded, what is pending, and then what we repackage. Say, we still think this is a great program, even though this grant was rejected. We're going to repackage it and put it into another funder. We're going to keep trying to get it funded. So this is what you'll see, and so you'll see that the Resource Development Office requested $10,912 or $912,600. Why can't I say that? $10,912,651. And then we received $589,016. So, and then it'll give you
a 1 out of 5 hit rate.
Yeah. So if I'm going to give you rather than
1 out of 4.
I was going to say, it doesn't matter if you can say it. It only matters if you get it.
9 out of 10.
Right.
Thanks for helping me.
Well,
I can't even spit out the numbers. That's
That's pretty amazing.
Yep. Now, you're doing all the grant management for all of the departments now.
right.
Okay.
I have the grant management list too, if you're interested in that. And I also have.
Okay, now that the EDC has gone over to the Cape Cod Commission, are they picking up that responsibility, or do you still have that?
Well,
No, it's only Dan that went over there, not the whole EDC. The EDC is.
No, I know, I get that, but
Yeah,
was went from
Right,
being a
I
grant
understand.
administrator to,
Right.
Yeah, because of the SEDS that they wanted the grants to be in house with them, and the reporting that they were doing, in the process of transitioning those grants over to Gale Coyne. So what we were previously doing, we're finishing up with what we were already in, but they're going to be taking over that responsibility of what they're doing because there's so much tied to the 15 towns in the SEDS requirements. So, yeah, so we've been meeting with Gail and the resource development officers assigned to those grants. So that's going to be transitioning over there.
Okay.
Phil Burt is still over there, right?
Yep, and just trying to, just for your information, we've been looking for years for more success bringing resources in. There's been more requests because of the economy for resources, for grants, for shared resources, for that type of thing. So we've moved in the space where we pulled out the EDC management. We have two resource development officers dedicated to management of the grants. And now we're moving to almost clearing up. I mean, we still have this other resource development officer involved in the management. Philip is all writing, and we're trying to carve out more time of the second resource development officer, where we pulled out from the EDC, filling that time with more writing, so that we can bring in more in terms of the capacity for the county departments and what they're looking to do, and also then the towns.
Now, what's the climate out there now in terms of available monies for project? Has that dried up along with the economy, or is?
I think it moves with the priorities. I mean,
Right.
I don't know how to say it. I
for.
call it the flavor of the month, or
Uh-huh.
it's like it's not to say that in a flip way that the needs it tends to go here. Homeland Security was a lot of money here, and then you just be careful to not just chase the money. That we're making sure that we have clear needs, and then we see the pockets of money. But as far as the opportunities have been out there with the recovery money. And last year we put a lot of resources. We brought a lot of resources here to the community and to the region from our ability to be able to bring in some of those resources. And we had, because of the county's reputation, because of the county's ability to be able to be responsive or low risk in terms of what we've done in the past, we were able to they would say, hey, here's this money, like we're doing with HAC and the additional AmeriCorps members. So I think that there's opportunities like that, and some of the other areas where the money is lean, or they've cut out some programs, there's additional money in other places. I don't know if I'm answering the
No,
question.
you are.
It's there. It's just,
Well,
as
just
you say,
moving
it's just that, and now it's energies, and it's all of these renewables, and it's all, it's where the priorities of the nation and state and
Exactly.
filter down, right?
Exactly.
What about the accountability piece that comes with the AERO money? That's been a concern for me because there's an administrative burden that is added, and I was wondering if that adds to your overhead. Or can you comment on it now?
Bill. It's been. Thanks for the question. It's taken up a lot of time. That people. We were very aware of it before it ever came down. So what we did before these contracts were even signed, when we were actually putting the proposals in for this, we were very aware of the additional reporting requirements in the Office of Management and Budget. Wants this transparency. They want to know how many jobs did it create. I mean, so our performance measures and everything were plugged in. We've kind of like been over the top with it, trying to stay on it. We've color coded it different. Anything that's recovery or stimulus money is in a different color. It's
Right.
just we're really on it because of that additional. And at any time, because they too don't understand, I mean, not that they don't understand, it's just that the money comes down so fast and furious that they then want something after the fact,
Yeah, they need
and
some
we need to
accountability.
be having that all
Yeah,
as we go along.
And by the way, that problem is shared across the country because the major issue for a lot of other counties is we're getting this money, but we don't get the money to support the administrative overhead that goes with the accountability, especially since they haven't clearly defined or defined at all what they're going to be asking.
Exactly, and it's hard because we just had, you know, the last Friday was the big report time for this, so we had to have all of this information, and then the format that they gave us originally is not all of the information that they wanted additional. So we've, like I said, we back here we planned
You
and
anticipated
prepared,
what it
and
was that
helped.
they would be asking. What are all the questions that they could be asking? What are all the accountability issues that they could be asking? And already get those in there so that
Yep.
if and when they come up. And even though I'm sorry I jumped in with that. You know, this is not just a loan to you. It's you know, it's in all of these fundings. It was with the regional network. You have to have, and they do come up with something new. However, you know, that money wouldn't be available, and the needs are so great and so huge across the nation, and so in every sector, that it's hard to for I think them to come up with a plan. If they had taken the time to formulate what it was they were going to ask and do all of that, the money still would be held up and we wouldn't have gotten it. So
Exactly.
I you know, you have to take it the way it is, and you know, we're lucky that there's money there to be had, and if we have to kind of work around that administrative piece,
Yeah.
maybe some of that can be
And
factored in.
we would have lost AmeriCorps. I mean, last year,
Right.
the truth is, we would have lost a staff and a half, and we're able to recoup that this year. I mean, we're still going to have to do it again this year.
Right.
but no county money went into bringing those 6 additional members, keeping our main program, AmeriCorps staff intact, and having a little additional money in for mileage and some other things. It wasn't there.
Right. And now they've expanded the areas that AmeriCorps goes into with Vista and all
Right.
this, and it's really just that, I mean, I've heard only great things across the country, from people who are incorporating these young volunteers. And I was we were all at the APCC the other day. One of the staff people came up and said, I was formerly here with AmeriCorps. And she's now working with APCC, so she had only great things to say about the program as well. So.
It's you know, over the years, it grows into the community, and we have to be careful that we are providing the resources where they're needed. And now with the economy, this is an opportunity for them to coordinate and build the capacity, not take
Right.
over, but build the capacity so that when they pull back, that the organizations are able to do it themselves.
Right.
That the volunteers are trained and that they're building us. So they're so far so good doing that.
And one of the things that that's happened over time was that the original resistance to AmeriCorps was that each one of the towns could do it on their own for less money. But it turns out that each of the towns didn't do it, and as time has gone on, without the AmeriCorps asset to provide this, then all of these things that have benefited all of the towns that have participated wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, it's true, Bill. And the other part of this that you don't know all of this ahead of that.
Right.
For any proposal, it's a proposal. You go in and you think this is what's going to happen. But one of the things that the community also works. That they're the anchor people. And
Right.
the new members come in every year. The commissioner, we're all anchored. And we know how to best use those resources for our community.
Mm-hmm.
And they know best how to use those resources for their organizations, the towns. And so that's been working, like where you hear, we couldn't have done it without AmeriCorps.
Right.
Well, that's what we want. So,
Right.
So far that's been going really well, especially in an economy like this. It gives us opportunity to build the capacity. And there's more of this coming down with this Kennedy Hatch Act. This new act is going to be the biggest volunteer engagement of our country's history.
Right.
So I think it's
Bigger than the Peace Corps?
Yep. Not bigger in name, but bigger in the fact that it's offering resources and opportunities over the next 7 years that we've never seen.
And this program is called?
The act is the Kennedy Hatch Act, where they have put all of this over 7 years. They're going to increase 250,000 AmeriCorps members from what it is now, 75,000.
Combination of the liberal lion and the Mormon getting together and putting a program together for public service. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Great. So I also have some of the value added or the individual placements where the members are. If you would like me to put that in a packet for you,
I'd like
or have them here.
It would be it'd be good to have a cum, because that, in other words, what does this amount to in terms of value? And for me, when I talk to people, what have we added to the community as a whole based upon what this all means? And then, when you do that, you have to identify each of the towns that this is contributing to, right?
Yeah. Well, the AmeriCorps group, though, I know, that came to the Board of Selectmen and found it and reported from the Bourne House what their activities were in the town, and it was very, very impressive. It really was. And there was a good exchange between board members and the volunteers.
And we like you to know, all of the commissioners to know where they go out to every town.
Yes, they do.
And the assembly, we're trying to make sure that the advisory board and the assembly members know, because they so they can be there. You were there, that was great, but so they can be there when they're in their town,
Right? Exactly.
So, but I do have everything under the sun here. Is what I have. But I have these pie charts, and I've given these to you before because I like them, because it's like you can see the value added. What did the program bring in? In how much is the match? But this is the value added, which is $961,875 dollars. So I wanted to.
And that's this. What period is that covering?
It's the whole. It's the 47. You're looking at this year.
This year.
Yep.
Okay, so for the last 12 months, that's what that amount.
Right.
So we added $1 million to the bottom line in the house.
Generally speaking.
Darlene, don't they go on a per hour basis?
Well, the independent sector sets that national volunteer rate at $20.25.
Yeah.
So what we do is we'll take that. Now, we're not counting the community volunteers. This is only AmeriCorps members. It's not counting the volunteers we bring in.
So that's leveraging a whole bunch more.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay,
So
I need to get a hold of Phil Burke, by the way.
oh, these. What am I doing? That's why I keep on coming up with this paper, because it goes with it.
Okay.
Oh, brother. It's okay.
What's Phil Burke's extension?
I don't know it off
What's your
my head.
extension?
6868.
Thank you.
Because I put this on
10 years, almost
on a separate program
$7.8
over
million.
for community TV about a year ago,
Oh yeah.
and it was very well received,
Yeah.
because people didn't realize what we were bringing in, what value we were adding, and what the grants programs was contributing to each of the towns. So it's probably time to do that again.
Yeah,
I'll get Phil a call.
let's see. I was there when we did that bill. That one time we did that too.
Yeah.
You did it again and again though after that, but that was good.
Redundancy is the soul of learning. First you tell them, then you tell them that you told them, then you tell them again, and keep doing that. And eventually they'll believe that we're actually contributing to the quality of life of all the citizens of Barnstable County, which is our mission.
It is, and when you see the members in some, all the departments. I'm not just saying it's the resource development because we have an incredibly. What we do in this county, sometimes you think we work in the county and we should. You hear these things, and even though you know them, you're like, wow.
Well, and the
departments
enthusiasm with which they present their information is really catching, I think.
Yep.
Well, Darlene, I'll, if you're open to it, would you like to come on and go through and go through what you're doing? I have time on the 25th on the program. I don't know if you're free.
I don't know. I'll have to see.
Let me give you the exact date, and then you can get back to me.
And if it wasn't me, I could definitely have one of the AmeriCorps staff or resource development officers too.
It works.
You're doing
better
the
it works
just
better.
one person.
Yeah, if it's just one person, because
Okay.
you have a chance to talk. At 3 o'clock on the 25th
Okay.
over at Yarmouth.
And this is the
county chatter program.
Yeah.
Regional, telling people about programs of regional interest and regional impact across the county. It's a way to flesh out some of the things that we're trying to get across. We're trying to get visibility for what the county does, and we're doing these programs. At the same time, we're also trying to focus on some of the individual programs, individual departments and what they do. George Hoyfelter was on, Monday, and George talked about the health and environment, the 22 regional programs that he's involved with for the county, and I get a lot of good feedback on it that people say, I didn't know you did that.
I was doing a commercial.
Of course
You're doing
I
a commercial.
Can we just finish up your budget since we started in on there? It'd be a good idea to finish that up.
Yep.
Does
So
anybody have any?
You're
other-
looking to hire somebody else, is that it?
What, Bill?
Are you looking to add head count? You don't have it in your budget.
No.
Okay, and you had 2 people that were doing what Phil Burt did before, didn't you?
No. Philip has always been just writer.
Who was the second guy that was over there? What was his name?
Greg.
Greg, okay.
He's the one I was just telling you about that I've been taking and pulling off the management and putting Julie and Cindy, the other 2 resource development, more managing and freeing him up to write. He's a great writer.
Okay.
So we have both Philip and Greg doing more writing because we're getting more and more requests for writing. And also, if you saw on the back of I know we need to get back, Pat, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The report I gave you also shows the workshops that we've gone out to. That one with the yellow right there,
Right here.
right there at the end, it'll give you the workshops that we've been going out.
Yes.
Very end, the towns that we've done the workshops in.
And may I ask a question on that? It
Grant
says
writing
the
101.
attendees, so that's the number of attendees from, like, say, the town of Barnstable, the town of Yarmouth that came, and their point person was the person
Right.
that you coordinated with for all those employees. That's really great.
Yeah, and they were really well received. We've also been helping them write grants themselves because there's a lot of grants that they want to get from particular departments. So the Grant 101 series is pretty good. So I'm sorry, back to
Well,
you.
I had a question on the second page because you have it in bold, and that's the group insurance AmeriCity match.
That's
What does that mean?
that I just said that because it's so high. It's normally not that high, and it went up because that employee chose the family plan, and it increased it, and that's why this went up. I didn't want you to think that this was like, why is this big jump in the budget?
Oh, because you had an employee move from an individual plan to a family plan.
And then I just wanted to tell you that. So
Okay.
I kind of like all the increases so that I know that you have tough decisions and everything. So I knew that we wanted to make sure that you understood where those increases were and what they're for.
So that it sort of takes up a lot of the 8% increase overall, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I want to support again that, the 15,000 for the cash in hand, because that is essential to really respond to a lot of things that come down. We don't really get a lot of notice when we're invited to participate in things.
Right.
So that's
true.
important to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're doing a great job.
And I did find these. Thank you.
And the other thing I want to say is that, when you have these volunteers that come and they're from out of state or other places in Massachusetts, and then they come and work here, you're only benefiting. Yeah, you're creating, a healthier, more sustainable place fiscally and economically.
I just think the county is very fortunate to have a research and development
Yes,
office.
I do too.
Truly. I mean, pardon me?
Not research and development, resource.
I mean resource, thank you. Resource and
Yeah.
development.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important.
It's one of the only counties that in the Massachusetts and in the nation that have these, because you look at them. Franklin County used to have one, and I'm not sure if
There
they
is
still
no
do.
more Franklin
You're not
County.
really a county.
They're not
just a conglomerate.
There is service
Council of
organization.
Governments.
So
Yeah,
they
just a
don't have
council of
that same
governments.
thing.
There's a service organization that goes out on the
They
street
call it Franklin
once a
County.
year for $2.5 million, and they maybe get a million, that's it.
Okay.
We're
I
county.
want to give you these only because I wanted you to be able to see where the members are in case, they're
Great.
in their
Thank you.
individual service.
This is
And then I'm giving you paper.
Thank you.
George, do you have any of these?
Yeah, I did.
very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you to the county commissioners for your support.
Thank you. And to your staff, and extend our...
I will. And thanks.
You'll get back then.
I will.
Okay, you know my emails and all that.
I do.
This is really helpful.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
Well, thank you for all that good information.
Yes,
And,
and hope all is well.
right.
Home.
Yeah.
Thank you. And if you need anything,
We know where to find you.
Yes, if you need anything to take out anywhere, with you.
Great.
Okay.
I know where to
I
find
think we're
you.
done with everything.
Yes, we are.
I'm going to move to adjourn and I have to go to the other.